Okay, so welcome to another one of these combat videos. This is part 4. In this one, we're going to be talking a little bit about archery. I thought maybe we just start by taking a look at the skill tree and take it from there. So, like many of the other ways of dealing damage in this game, the first perk, Overdraw, all 5 ranks in this is pretty useful, as it just levels up the damage that you do with your bows. And I think actually the archery skill tree has one of the better skill trees. Almost no perk here is bad or useless, and the final perk in this tree is actually one that does not disappoint, fortunately. But yeah, so self-explanatory, you want to put all the perks into Overdraw. Let's take a look at here at Eagle Eye. This one lets you zoom in when you aim with a bow, and it's actually pretty useful for those long-range shots. Skyrim has a little bit of a arc to arrows, which is dependent on the weight of your bow. It's a little bit complicated, but depending on like whether you're using, let's say, an imperial bow that weighs like 8 units or something, and you're using like a Daedric bow that's like, I don't know, 20 or 21 units, the initial arc of the arrow is going to be different. This can help you, I guess, track the arrow over distances so that you can get used to the trajectory that the arrows take. But it is something that you're going to have to get used to if you're using one of the heavier bows. However, the heavier bows are better over distances. The steady hand perk is actually one that I usually never use. Maybe I would if the first rank slowed time down by 25%. Personally, I think slowing time down by 50% is a lot. Maybe there should be 3 ranks to this: 25, 50, and 75. Or whatever the second rank is. Like I said, I never really get it. But maybe I will for this video just for the shots, because slowing down time even more after you use slow time shout is really, really fun in this game. Archery doesn't have very many shouts that you can use to improve your archery build. It's very difficult to combine with shouts. Slow time is one of the ones that it's good to combine it with. So here we go, power shots. This is really, really, really useful. If you combine this with a crossbow, and let's say you use Feindal or something to train yourself quickly up to 50, you're gonna get a lot of stagger like right off the bat. As a matter of fact, I do believe crossbows are a little bit better than bows in the beginning of the game, because they give you more of like free things, like they give you more damage off the bat without you having to smith it up, and they also give you the stagger automatically without you having to actually go to 50 and get this perk. But this is a very good perk, and everybody should get it. Next up, quick shot. This is what's gonna like make you feel like your build is really, really coming together. 30% may not sound like a lot, but this is extremely, extremely strong, especially when you combine it with like necromage vampires and some of the bows that can draw even faster than normal. That's really good. Next up, bullseye. Another excellent perk. I feel like I keep saying this with archery. All the perks here are so good. 50% chance to paralyze your target. When you're using this on a bow that has a high DPS, you are just paralyzing everybody all the time. And what's funny about this perk is that I think it paralyzes the target for like, it says a few seconds, but it's like 10 or 15 seconds. You know what's the weird thing is that this is a lot easier to hit consistently compared to, let's say, the War Master or whatever it's called, the one-handed and two-handed perks. They also have paralyzing attacks where you have to do a backwards power attack, which is much more difficult. Granted, that gives you a 25% chance, but I promise you this is way more like user-friendly and efficient in combat, because having to do backwards power attacks is not very like easy or convenient, let's say. So a very good perk. Of course, it's actually a level 100 perk. Skyrim has this thing where the master spells or the level 100 perks usually are not that worth it, but this is an exception in the archery skill tree for sure. Critical shot, 10% chance to hit critical damage. This one is one I would actually just give a pass. I would unlock it just to get to the other ones, but critical damage in Skyrim, I've said this before, is based off the base damage of your weapon. So if you have a Daedric bow and the bow does, you know, base damage of like, I don't know, 20 or so, your critical damage will be based off of that 20, no matter how high you smith the bow. Do not worry about critical damage when it comes to any offensive skill or any offensive combat skill. You do have to get it to get Hunter's Discipline. This one is one of the weaker perks. Arrows, if you just are a little bit disciplined, ironically enough, yeah, arrows can be, I mean, it's a little bit micromanaging, but you can get arrows relatively easily, especially mid to late game. It should be very easy to get arrows, and one of the better bows, you don't even need arrows. That's with the bound bow. However, Ranger, moving faster with a bow, along with the perk quick shot. Quick shot is like what's gonna make you feel super fast, but Ranger, which is gonna actually get a level 60, this one is another one that just, this perk right here, if you're using light armor with it, can actually make you move at a speed where most enemies will have trouble keeping up with you, even if you have your bow drawn. So they're gonna have trouble like tracking you and stuff like that. And when you combine this with like staggering them as they're approaching you and or the slow time shout, this is for sure one of the things that's gonna make you feel like an absolute badass when you're using combat archer build. When it comes to shouts and archery, one of the reasons that I don't really like to play archers until it's like a little bit later on in the game is because it's really only like slow time combined with like dragon aspect that can make you have some fun with archery. Because since you have to draw a string, it's not very useful, and you can't shout when you have your string drawn, if that makes sense, right? And your overall like stagger potential will always be a little bit lower than one-handed or two-handed, because with one-handed and two-handed you have the quick bash attack or potentially a power attack that does come out a little bit quicker than arrows can possibly come out, and they also have a higher chance of staggering if you time them right. So archery is very limited in terms of like the shouts that you can use. Sure, you can use things like Dragon Rend against dragons, that one's pretty self-explanatory, but you can't really use Elemental Fury. The damaging shouts like Fire Breath and Frost Breath are not that good either. Slow Time is really the one you want to use, because you can think of Slow Time kind of like, Slow Time is like what Elemental Fury is for weapons. You know, you can't Elemental Fury a bow, but if you slow time down, you slow the enemy significantly more than you, so you essentially get a bigger DPS because time is slowed down. This is a pretty good shout to use with the bow, although I do recommend a lot of shout cooldown because slow time by default has a pretty long cooldown. Whirlwind Sprint can also be decent to position yourself and get away from things. What I've noticed is that by the time you Whirlwind Sprint and then you turn around and then you take like aim again, the enemies will have closed the distance down quite a lot. And the first word of Unrelenting Force can also be really useful to like keep your distance. So Become Ethereal is good against mages, Slow Time is good against everybody, and Whirlwind Sprint and Unrelenting Force to keep your distances can be good against warriors and close the distance when you're fighting mages. Another one that can work out really well in the early game is the shout Disarm. Disarm is a criminally underrated shout. The only thing you need to remember is that you have to pick up the enemy's weapon so that they don't use it against you. But Disarm can be really, really good combined with an archer, because you eliminate the threat of the melee enemies closing in the distance, right? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about crossbows first. The archer is pretty like linear, if that makes sense. There's not a lot of variety when it comes to the best sort of weapons in class. You really just want to use the best ones. You don't have the Elemental Fury aspect of it, whether you should keep it enchanted or if you want to use Elemental Fury or not. So it's a little bit less complicated. Basically, you just want to have the bow or crossbow that does the most DPS, which I will be talking a little bit about as well. But basically, when it comes to crossbows, you want to, in the beginning, in the early game, you want to pick, you can pick I think it's the silver crossbow that you can buy. It's one of the better ones. Or you can do what I do. High damage is pretty important in the early game. I like to go to the Fletcher in Solitude and just basically steal the Daedric crossbow from him. This is one of like the top 3 highest ranking crossbows. You have this one, you have the Dragonbone crossbow, and I believe the enhanced Dwarven crossbow, which I've never really gotten myself though. But yeah, these 3 options are pretty solid. You shouldn't, this is if you have the anniversary edition of the game, you really shouldn't need to use anything else. If you don't have it, I believe just the normal crossbow, and then you can upgrade to like Dwarven crossbow or Dwarven enhanced crossbow. Those are the only 2 options you have, I think. When it comes to crossbows, there's a little bit of a trick. I did say it wasn't very complicated, but you know, when you deep dive into the combat of Skyrim, it does become a little bit more, not complicated, but more like interesting. So what you do with the crossbow is, instead of, after you fire the shot, instead of reloading like you normally would, if you double tap the hotkey that you have your crossbow hotkey to, he will quickly remove it and then equip it again. This will skip the reload animation, and this is significantly faster, almost like 50% faster than reloading normally, especially before you get the quick reload perk, which is like level 60 or 70 or quick shot, whatever it's called. That reload animation, of course, doesn't allow you to fire again, but it also slows down your movement. Hotkeying things can be really good for this, because it keeps your character from being like stuck after he power attacks or after he shoots a bolt at somebody, right? You get free movement immediately. It's a pretty useful tip. Between crossbows and bows, I think that early game crossbows are better because you get the innate stagger. You don't have that on bows until you get the perk, and they do a lot more damage early game, so that the DPS of crossbows will be better early on. Once you start getting perks into archery though, I usually switch over to bows. And when it comes to bows, there are a couple of bows that you absolutely want to avoid. And I don't know why nobody talks about this. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you watch footage of this. First off, one of the highest DPS bows in the game is the Dragonbone bow. For some reason, the Dragonbone bow does not follow the damage to slowness, I guess, if that makes sense, like draw speed. The Dragonbone bow draws like it was an Orcish bow or something around that timing, but it does damage comparable to like a Daedric bow. That basically means that Daedric bows are a big no-no. Daedric bow, Nightingale bows, Ebony bows, all of these bows have terrible, terrible DPS, like damage per second, right? While the Dragonbone bow does the same damage, around the same damage as all of these, it draws like an Orcish or a Dwarven, or it draws around that speed. I don't know why it does this, because Dragonbone weapons on average have higher damage than Daedric, but they also have higher weight. This thing, bow's weight is what determines their draw speed. For the most part, there are a couple of exceptions. But the Dragonbone bow, for some reason, just ignores this. Maybe it's a glitch, maybe it was intentional. What I'm trying to say, do not, after watching this video, you do not want to use the Daedric bow or the Ebony bow or the Nightingale bow. I know they look cool, but they have terrible, terrible damage per second. A couple of other bows that are pretty good is the Bow of Shadows. The one thing I don't like about this bow is when you draw it, you become invisible, and I think your crosshair disappears, so you can't see where your first arrow goes. It's not until you shoot that you can actually see it. If you're a stealth archer, this would be a little bit better, and maybe there are advantages to this if you're a stealth archer, but if you're a combat archer, it may throw you off a little bit here and there. Another one is the Bound bow. This is my favorite one to use. I think it looks pretty cool. This is a way to get like the Daedric bow in a way. You also get the arrows. The Bound bow is so great because you don't have to worry about arrows, and I've noticed that like in your head, when you have to worry about ammunition, you take more time lining up the shots, which means that you, generally speaking, will be a little bit more careful, and it's better to just like have the freedom to just spam out arrows. This will actually train your aim over time as well, because you're taking a little bit more risky shots. So the Bound bow is excellent. This is always what I use end game, and probably what you're going to be seeing in the clips for the most part, because the Bound bow is yeah, it's really good. With the anniversary edition, you have Bound quiver as well, although Bound quiver actually counts as a power. It does not count as a conjuration spell, so you can use the Bound bow as your conjuration spell, and then Bound quiver, and you have insane DPS and insane damage. These are all Daedric arrows, even though arrow damage or ammunition doesn't really matter as much as people think, but it's still good to have like the best arrows in the game, pretty much. Another one, last one to mention, is like the Aureol's bow. This one has a special effect. It's more deadly towards vampires, so depending on the situation, you can use Aureol's bow too. This one also has very, very good draw speed, like better than this caliber of bow, this material of bow usually has. And that's pretty much it. The bows and the crossbows that I talked about, those are really the only ones you want to use. You don't really want to use any of the other ones, because they have such worse damage per second, like by a long shot. Alright, so that was it. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far in the video, remember to like it, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.